Then in Sports Central, we go for our first team prediction of this offseason, and it's going to be over the Michigan Wolverines, the defending national champions. No better way to get started with our team predictions this offseason than with Michigan. You consider just the story of this team last season, the way this team had struggled the past 2 years in the college football playoff. There were so many barriers that this team had to break through the past few years to get to this point, and they finally did it. They won their national championship. Jim Harbaugh's off to the NFL. It's the start of a new era in Michigan after winning a national championship last year. How's this team going to be in 2024? This team's going to look a whole lot different. So we'll be looking at this team top to bottom, the players this team will be returning and losing, and predicting their schedule top to bottom in this video. So with that, let's get started. Quick recap of 2023, just start to finish. This was the best team in the country, and this defense was truly incredible last season. I mean, they really didn't have a very difficult first couple of months. They had East Carolina, UNLV, Bowling Green, and Rutgers, and also Nebraska on the road in September. All 5 of those games, now they scored 30-plus points in, and they allowed a combined, this was the craziest part, they allowed a combined 30 points in those first 5 games. Truly incredible what this defense did. For the majority of last season, I mean, they played Minnesota on the road, beat them 52-10, put up 52 on Indiana. This offense really started to hit their stride there in October and really never looked back. They beat Michigan State 49-0. November was where things were a little bit more bumpy. They beat Purdue 41-13. But the fact is, that's the crazy part, is this team was still dominant in November, and that was really their most difficult month as well. They played Penn State on the road, beat them by 9, beat Ohio State by 6. Obviously, Ohio State in the position that they were in, that was a huge win. So for Michigan to go undefeated through the regular season, beat Iowa 26-0 in the Big Ten championship game. I mean, we knew this Michigan team was just a force going into the college football playoff, and they were still being doubted as well. Alabama was expected by many to beat Michigan in the Rose Bowl, but in the end, Michigan prevailed 27-20 in what was truly a Rose Bowl classic, and then they took on Washington. Felt like the Huskies were the team of destiny last season, just the way they won their games last year and even got to the national championship. Huskies were an incredible team, but Michigan denied them big time. 34-13 got the win, and Michigan won their national championship last season. So truly an unforgettable season. This team was the undisputed best team in the country last year. But looking forward to 2024 now, as I mentioned before, things will be a lot different in 2024. J.J. McCarthy's off to the Minnesota Vikings, and now it's the quarterback situation is a bit of a question mark. It seems like after spring ball, Alex Orji is going to be the main favorite to start at quarterback this season. There's also Jaden Denegal and then Jack Tuttle, who's a 7th-year quarterback. Jack Tuttle's been around forever. I feel like, he's been a backup for Michigan for a couple of years. I remember him being at Indiana before that. So, and Tuttle's really never had a starting job. But it just sounds like Alex Orji is the guy with the most upside. So we'll see what this quarterback situation looks like come fall. But as of right now, Orji's the main guy, it seems. The backfield, Donovan Edwards coming back. He overall was good last season. Blake Corum was, Donovan Edwards kind of dealing with injuries has been an issue, but Blake Corum, obviously an incredible 2023 season, 1,300 yards and 28 touchdowns. He is off to the NFL, so it's up to Donovan Edwards to step up and lead that backfield, which honestly I feel like he can definitely be able to do as long as he stays healthy. The receiving core, Roman Wilson gone, Cornelius Johnson gone, second tight end, A.J. Barner is also gone. Colston Loveland was the top tight end on this team last season, just over 600 yards, 4 touchdowns. He had an impressive season. He is coming back, which is huge, but the O-line's definitely taken a few hits, losing 5 on there, losing 2 on the D-line, 2 linebackers, and then 3 in the secondary. So Michigan is, that's what you expect, though, out of a national championship winning team. They're usually experienced, and you're usually going to lose a lot of players after winning a national title or having a really impressive team. So this isn't anything too out of the ordinary for Michigan, but what is definitely of note is that this team is going to be a whole lot different in 2024, and also obviously Harbaugh to the NFL, so Sherrone Moore taking over, which I'm pretty optimistic about. I feel like he's a good head coach, and we saw him a bit towards the end of the 2023 season as the head coach of this team as well when Jim Harbaugh was suspended. But But Wolverines are going to look a whole lot different in 2024. Let's look at the transfer portal and recruiting now. CJ Stokes is off to Charlotte. There's not too many significant moves in the transfer portal for this team. Clemens is off to Oregon State. You got Josh Priebe coming in from Northwestern for the O-line. Sounds like he'll be a starter in 2024. Otherwise, you bring in Barham, a linebacker from Maryland, and you lose a couple other defensive guys that weren't overall too significant, but you're recruiting 16th in the country, 4th in the Big Ten, got 17 4-stars coming in, 9 3-stars. Overall, not terrible. I've got this team at a 9 out of 10 on the future forecast. I feel like, this is a little bit of a time of transition, obviously, between coaching staff, but also just the talent that was lost after last season. But the state of this team right now, with recruiting and everything, I feel like the future is still very bright for Michigan. This team should be a contender in the Big Ten for years to come. I'd be very surprised if they fell off real quickly. It's going to be a little while before this team maybe can contend for a national championship again, but I do think that things will at least be good in 2024. But with that, let's take a look at the schedule for 2024 now. So we start off with Fresno State on the 31st of August. Fresno State, really not expecting too much out of them, so an easier matchup to start out the season there than Texas in week 2. This is going to be a big one there against the Longhorns. Texas, I really could see. They're one of, I'd say, 4 teams that I really could see winning the national championship next year. They're going to be experienced. They were in the playoff last season. They could definitely end up as the number 1 overall heading into the playoffs. So keep an eye on Texas. Arkansas State, USC to follow, Minnesota as well. So you're at home for the entire month of September, which is nice. But then you hit the road for Washington on the 5th, rematch of the national title game there. And then Illinois on the 19th after your bye. And then Michigan State at home, Oregon at home in early November. This is a pretty difficult schedule overall, taking on, obviously, Texas, who's going to be a national contender. Oregon, who's going to be a national contender. Honestly, Ohio State could be as well. I think Oregon and Texas, though, in particular, really are going to be 2 teams very tough. There are 2 of the teams that I could see winning the national championship for sure. Indiana on the road, Northwestern home, then Ohio State obviously on the road to finish out the regular season. So it's going to be a tough one for Michigan. This team has got some very challenging matchups for sure. But looking at the first month of action, I think you beat Fresno State pretty easily. Texas, though, is a different story. I think the Longhorns going into that one, Michigan is still going to be, obviously with all the changes and the areas of this team, I feel like they're still going to be trying to smooth some things out. There's still going to be a few bumpy areas for Michigan heading into that Texas matchup so early on in the season. So I think that despite Michigan being at home, Texas does find a way to win that one. Also, by the way, I mentioned this before, but the Longhorns, the experienced Quinn Ewers, they're going to be a really tough team in 2024. So I think Texas finds a way to beat Michigan there. Arkansas State, USC, both wins. USC game maybe a little bit closer, but Michigan's definitely the better team in comparison to the Trojans next season. So I take Michigan to win that one. So 3-1 heading into the Minnesota game. I think you take care of Minnesota, no problem. Really not expecting much out of them at all. Washington on the road is an interesting one. The Huskies next year are definitely going to fall off a bit as well. I feel like Washington's going to fall off a whole lot more than Michigan will. But the Huskies on the road, I do think Michigan finds a way to win that one, but maybe a bit closer than some might expect going into that one. Then Illinois on the road, Brett Bielema. Illini were kind of a disappointment last year, but I do think they rebound a bit in 2024 and have a halfway decent season. But I do think Michigan definitely wins that one. The Michigan State take care of them. So you're 7-1 then heading into the Oregon match. This is another game where it really could go either way. I probably would expect the Ducks to be favored heading into that matchup. I think the Ducks could, they've got Ohio State in October, so they could have a loss heading into November, but there is a chance the Ducks are undefeated going into Ann Arbor for that one, and I think Michigan picks up what probably will be their best win of the season there against the Ducks on November 2nd. Dylan Gabriel, Oregon's going to be a tough team. They are very much a team that's going to be a national contender, so it's definitely a 50-50 one, but I'm going to lean Michigan there. I do think they at least beat either Texas or Oregon. I think it's probably going to end up being Oregon just because the time of the year is a little more favorable versus Texas, which is in week 2. But then Indiana on the road, Northwestern, both easier wins. Ohio State on the road. I do think the Buckeyes beat Michigan this season, so they end Michigan's streak of beating them, and Ohio State does in the end probably proceed on to the college football playoff. But obviously got to get into the Big Ten championship and win that as well. But for Ohio State, I think next season they're looking a little bit better than Michigan. They're going to be more experienced than the Wolverines for sure. But regardless, in the end, I think that Michigan does lose 2 games this season. I think they get to 10 wins. 10-2 is going to be the record. But by the way, this is a very difficult schedule. That kind of goes without saying when you consider Texas, Oregon, Ohio State, 3 really tough games there. And you could even say Washington's going to be a challenge. Illinois could be a challenge. USC is kind of a wild card team. I could see them really anywhere. They were really disappointing last season, though. But either way, I got this team at a 9 out of 10 on the schedule difficulty. I feel like this could be one of the most difficult schedules in the country. It does help that you have Texas and Oregon both at home. If those were, or one of them were road games, this probably would be a 10. But you look at the range for this team, I think the ceiling is 12-0. I feel like, though, the odds that this team goes 12-0 are pretty slim, just based on the experience of this team. And there are going to be there might be a bump in the road or two in this upcoming season. I feel like that's something that could be expected. But I think the floor is 8-4. I don't see this team being any worse than that. Honestly, 8-4 is probably just as likely as 12-0 for this team. But 9-11 wins seems like the most reasonable range. I got this team right in the middle at 10-2. I think this team is going to fall off just a little bit, but I don't really expect this team to fall off completely. I still feel like they're a contender in the Big Ten. They're not going to win the conference next season, but I do think that this team is at least making some noise and they're a contender this upcoming season. But with that, let me know your thoughts in the comments below on Michigan. What do you think of this team? Could they once again win the Big Ten? Obviously an incredible 2023 season, a little bit different in 2024, but I'm interested to hear your thoughts. And with that, I appreciate you guys watching as always. More team predictions to come. This is just the first of many. I appreciate you guys watching as always. My name's Evan. This is All Sports Central. Stay tuned for more. We'll catch you on the next one.